I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors December 18th, 2024 meeting at 5:33 p.m. to order. Announcements. Welcome all new Patton Township residents to the Patton Township community, a place for all. As you are able, please rise and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Additions to the posted agenda. Are there any items that the supervisor would like to add to the posted agenda at this time?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, next on the agenda is public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you are attending by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature on the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Are there any public comments at this time?
No.
Okay. Moving on. Next on the agenda is presentations, public hearings, and recognizing Pamela Robb for her service as board chair. Amy, I'm throwing that to you.
So I'm actually going to let Betsy or Sutan perhaps do this. I'm not sure which one. Betsy.
Oh, Sutan says it's me.
I'm going to take pictures.
Okay. So I might be the first to speak, but Madam Chair, I'm sure I won't be the last to speak. So I'm going to, I would love to publicly thank you for your service this year. For me in particular, keeping me on track and keeping all of us on topic, and for the many caring gestures that you make for all of us and for our community. So thank you for this year of serving as our chair and, as I said, keeping us focused and on track. Anyone else care to say a few words?
I want to thank you for your leadership and your mentorship and making me feel welcome and patience with learning.
No.
I prepared a long speech, but I'm not going to give it. You're just a fantastic chair.
Thank you.
You have no jokes about a chair? Deep-seated belief. Got it. Yeah, I mean, I'll keep this quick, but I hope that you know the love and care, that I have for you. I think what comes to mind is like representation is really important. And for someone who is of my age, sort of like coming into myself, and it's just been really important for me to see you here over the years, sort of like just serving with grace and compassion and fierceness, the way that you advocate for not only us here, sort of like on the board, but obviously our residents and, our staff. It's been humbling and encouraging to sort of like watch that. And I so appreciate you, extending more time and grace for me as I've developed and giving me some time before stepping into this role that I'll be stepping into, next year. And so, I couldn't have asked for a better, person to follow behind, and looking forward to just more experiences with you on this board. And your knowledge and wisdom and guidance. And so just thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before, I'm certain the chair has a few, she also has a few things to say. But on behalf of the board,
Yeah.
I'd like to present you with this. And
Oh.
as usual, so your trick I know is to bring in a bag of things. So I brought mine in earlier, but I hid it.
Oh.
And Amy even came in and said, where is it? I didn't want you to see it.
Okay. Oh, sneaky. Oh,
So there were
thank you.
We've got a couple of gift certificates in there, but
Oh,
we couldn't do it without your favorite things.
oh, yes. Snack time tonight. Thank you all. This is so nice. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with so many amazing individuals on the board, the staff. Chief knows for our officers, Betsy Dupree, for being an outstanding solicitor that you don't get enough praise for. Thank you, for keeping us all in line. Jenna, you're just getting aboard, but thank you. You came in running and taking on a lot and making things work a lot better. Larry, you know how I feel. Without your wisdom and your mentorship and the finance committee and just keeping our community afloat and operational. Amy, township manager, you stepped in some huge shoes and you were able to go beyond that. So I look forward to seeing you and Sutan just take Patton to another level and for our board to continue to be the best board of board of supervisors. Thank you. And two, without seeing that crew, thank you. You guys never get the credit. Without you, day in, day out, rain, sleet, or snow, you're making the male people look bad. But thank you for all of our municipalities that you videotape and keep us in line and keeping us abreast. Thank you so much. But to the community, I heard from quite a few of our community thanking me for my service, but it is an honor. It's a true honor, so thank you all. I'll hug you later. But moving right along, next on the agenda is a resolution 2024-18, approving the solar power purchase agreement. Larry, would you like to start us off with that? And that's Larry, Director of Finance.
Yes, just give me a second here to go to the proper.
We did receive one public comment on the solar power purchasing agreement, and that was forwarded to the board for your review. So I don't know if you wanted to address it in any way or not, but we did provide that public comment.
Just to clarify.
Okay, so we have now, I'm sorry.
Do you want to say anything about the public comment that you received on the SPPA?
You received it?
No, it's just the email, we all received it.
All
But it
right.
seemed like something that could have been corrected pretty quickly.
Okay,
How about if you want, I could just read the comment and then Larry's going to give his presentation.
yeah, okay.
So the comment that we received was from Dale and Jackie Hirschberger from Park Forest Avenue. They said We hope that you will vote no on the solar power purchasing agreement. We do not agree that even more of our tax monies will be out of our control by this entity's ability to receive funds above and beyond what was agreed upon just automatically without pre-approval. We have entrusted this board to wisely use our money and would hate to see that changed. So, that's the comment.
Larry?
I'll let Larry.
Okay, so I'll address that comment in the midst of my presentation.
Okay.
But,
Thank you.
so we have now, after going back to 2018, when Sutan was still in grade school, we started this process to develop this power purchase agreement with a group in the Center County area. Currently, we are at 10-member organizations, as one has just recently bowed out. We are at the point now, finally, where we have final contracts that we now have to either commit that we're going to sign and agree to join this PPA, or we're going to, continue to buy electricity the way we are. And I will, after I do my presentation, I'll certainly make my recommendation. Okay, so in today's discussion, we're going to discuss the document package and the cost and the rate projections. And I will address that email going to cost and rate projections. So the document package, we have 5 main contracts that each member of the organization, meaning Patton Township, is going to have to sign. The first one is the PPA Master with Prospect 14. And that contract is going to govern the purchase of the power from the solar generator. It sets the fixed price starting year 1, and it goes up 1.5% each year. So it starts at, I believe, 4.59 cents per kilowatt hour and goes up from there. That's the cost for just the solar energy, not to transmit it to us, not additional fees that Penn Alexa or West Penn Power is allowed to charge, etc. So we'll get into that when we get into the cost. Contract number 2 is the servicing agreement with Direct Energy. This is a contract that we're going to sign with Direct Energy for 5 years. Their agreement is going to provide us with that 20% of electricity that we're not buying from the solar generator. This is something that we have done every year or every 18 months to 3 years, depending on how long we signed the contracts. I've brought contracts to the board in the past that we've signed with various brokers for our electric usage. Contract number 3 is the Retail Commodity Master Agreement. It's also with Direct Energy, and this provides determined conditions for servicing the agreement with Prospect 14 and servicing the transaction confirmation, which is the contract that defines the ultimate sale of electricity for the 5 years. So that is our 4th contract, which is transaction confirmation. That's the contract that's going to define the ultimate sale of electricity for the 5-year period. It's either going to determine how much electricity we're going to buy and what the cost is going to be. Finally, the in-schedule agreement is between us, Direct Energy, and Prospect 14, and it gives the Direct Energy the authority to work on our behalf with Prospect 14 and to make sure that we all know what our individual responsibilities are. I want to take time right now to do a shout out to Betsy Dupuy. She did an excellent job in looking over these contracts on our behalf, on actually the behalf of all the 10-member organizations. I really appreciate everything you did. It makes my job and making a recommendation much easier. So thank you, Betsy. In addition to those 5 contracts, we have a 6th contract, which is the ongoing energy services consulting contract with Green Sky. We recommend this, actually, a working group recommends us to sign this contract so that we have somebody who has eyes on our electric bill every month to know whether whether Direct Energy and Prospect 14 are all following the contracts. So those are the contracts, and the contract for Green Sky is for 6 years. Sorry. Okay. So these are the contracts we just talked about. So in your agenda, there was a number of documents. The first document was a closing checklist, which just outlined each of these contracts and documents that we need to sign. Also was included a board resolution, which is going to authorize our township manager, this says ED for executive director, but in our case it's township manager, who would authorize Amy to sign these documents once they're finalized. They won't be finalized until we know actually who's all going to be signing these contracts. Hopefully all 10 of us will agree. I know a number of organizations have already in the past couple weeks agreed to sign the contracts, and now we're up for that. There's also a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, for what we're calling the Center County Solar Group. It talks about our history of what we've done since 2018 and the ongoing relationships that we're going to have in the future. And then, of course, the ongoing technical management consulting agreement with Green Sky. Okay, so in our case, the generation from the entire solar project's going to be somewhere around that 25.5 megawatts. We're going to be 0.25 megawatts, or 307 kilowatt hours of that total. Okay, so you can see that we're a small portion of this whole project. You can see that the school district is the biggest portion by far, followed by the State College Borough Water Authority and the State College Borough. Okay, so we're going to talk about cost of rates. Okay, so our cost, and this is where I'm going to address what was said in the email. The information out there deals with legal fees that are the legal fees for the entire group. Okay, $165,000 that was agreed upon, additional legal fees that, depending on, in my mind, depending on which board you talk about, is whether it was discussed or not. We certainly discussed when we asked Betsy to go and review that for us, that there were going to be additional legal fees. We did not discuss how much that would be, but we certainly knew on this board that there were additional legal fees. But when you're dealing with raw numbers, you know, you come to Larry Pegger and you say, $165,000. That's a lot of money, to me, personally. You come to Patton Township and you say $165,000. That's a lot of money, okay? But we're not paying all of that $165,000. We're talking about under $4,000 in total, under $2,000 in these additional amounts. And I guess my response to pre-approving that amount would be, it depends, okay? If we have a leaf truck during leaf and brush season, or a snow plow during snow plow season break down, I am certainly not going to wait until we have a next board meeting to get approval to repair that equipment. I'm going to go out and repair that equipment, and our budget has enough flexibility in it that if that's going to cost me $4,000 or $5,000, we have that flexibility in our budget. We certainly have the flexibility in our budget to absorb an additional $1,800 in legal fees. So I don't think that when you look at everybody's portion of this, it has the same effect. If I say to you, we're talking about $1,800 in legal fees, you say, oh, okay. If I say to you, we're talking about $120,000 in legal fees, you go, oh, that's a lot. But if I consider $120,000 over the total budgets of all 10 organizations, relatively speaking, $120,000 is not a lot. Okay, we're talking about a very small percentage of everybody's budget. So I just want to bring everybody into perspective of what we're talking about for Patton Township and Patton Township's taxpayers. It's about $1,800 that we're talking about. We already approved the payment of that $1,800 in a prior meeting. In total, when we're talking about the cost of the consultant and the cost of the legal fees, we have expended $7,323. Okay? We're expected to save over 15 years on this contract $37,572. So somewhere between year 4, year 5, we're going to have saved enough money to offset the $7,323. It would be my recommendation that we approve this resolution, we sign the contracts, we join the power purchase agreement, because I feel that more likely than not, we will save that money. And I think more likely we may save more than that $37,000. It's something that Penn State, in their power purchase agreement they signed a few years, back in 2018, they have far exceeded the amount that they thought they were going to save. And they're only partial way through the project. So that's where we're looking at. We're looking at, with all the cost associated with transmission costs, fees, such like that, including the consulting fee, including the RECs that we would buy, so that we can make an announcement that we are using solar generated power. We would buy RECs to be able to do that. Our cost would be 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, the cost with Rex is close or a little bit in excess of 9 cents a kilowatt hour. So we definitely would be saving today money if we sign this contract. This is a graph, 80%, which is what our commitment is with Rex. The blue line is our electric cost delivered to our facility here. The red line is starting at 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and I said it's already in excess of 8 cents, and it's going to go up, and going up 1.5% per year. The orange area is because, of course, electric is not flat. It's going to go up and down every day. So it's generally going to go up. So in some days, it may dip below our 7.6 cents. In other days, it may be way higher than our 7.6 cents. So the key takeaways from this agreement is that we lock in some low energy prices. We have projected savings over the life of the project, and it diversifies the grid and reduces emissions, which meets our goals, environmental goals. So at that point in time, I want to reiterate, I would recommend that we sign, or we pass the resolution authorizing Amy Farkas to sign the agreements when they're finalized, and I will take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions for the board at this time? Sudan?
Maybe not questions, comments, but yeah, questions just for clarity. Again, and this was in response to some of our residents who were, concerned about us signing this resolution and potentially having to be at the whim of paying more money based on, whatever these entities want to, charge us. And just for clarification, it seems like what's been out there, especially sort of like in the media, has really revolved around legal issues, legal fees.
That's correct. It's revolved around
Legal fees. And so, yes, there were unknown prices and costs that were associated with this project, but again, it came from legal fees. We, however, knew that there would be an additional cost that came with legal review, because that's just the nature of legal review. We could not have predicted, though, the exact amount, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so, just for this initial concern, what we are signing on to for this resolution, we're locking in prices.
We are locking in prices. We are locking in the solar price. And we are locking in a price with direct energy.
Okay.
Okay? What does not get locked in, and is at the whim of the market, is transmission, it's the fees from the JPM, it's those costs which every commercial electric customer bears. So we are not paying anything in addition to anybody who buys electricity off the market. There's not any cost that we are subjected to the whims of, the transmission cost has to go to the PUC. It has to be approved by the PUC. Those costs are borne by everybody who receives electricity. Mm-hmm. The cost of the solar power that comes off of this solar farm is set by the contract. It cannot be altered.
Yeah. And it's important to recognize, again, if we were to not even move forward with this, we would still be at the whims of the markets as everyone is, correct?
That's correct.
And
as we are today.
Yes, and the benefit of us doing this is obviously for clean energy and leading the charge in that. But also, we are saving, over the long haul, around $40,000.
That's correct.
And regardless, the costs that we had to then approve for legal fees that has already been sort of like paid or whatever, we actually accounted for a very small amount of that dollar figure, which was maybe around $2,000. And so we get the concern that it was in the six figures, right? And it's important to recognize that this is a shared project and a shared cost. And we, as Patton Township, we're very fiscally minded, and we understand that we did not, I'm just going to stop there.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the clarification.
Our share is approximately 2% of the total. So when you're looking at those large numbers that deal with the whole project, you have to consider we're only 2% of those numbers.
And I'm sure CNET will be bookmarking this particular discussion. And so I truly do appreciate, residents chiming in with their concerns, and they're hearing information from a lot of different sources. And, I'm glad that we provide a venue and a space here to bring some clarity to this. And I hope that those who are providing feedback when it comes to this and other things that we're going to get to, that you actually tune into this meeting and get your sort of like questions and concerns asked. And if we're not doing a good job at that, again, our staff are lovely at, holding space and meeting with individuals individually to discuss this stuff. So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Any other board member? Supervisor Elliott?
Very simply, when I first heard about the extra charges, I said, what? But then I realized we don't want to pull the plug on this. And so we should go ahead. And the what is WE.
Supervisor Whitman?
If I might, I'd like to make a motion.
If you can hold off on the motion for 1 minute. I just want to comment, and I applaud my vice chair for saying things that I was going to say, but I also want to make sure that the misinformation that was out there gets cleared up tonight for Patton Township. We had the working group, we had 3 representatives from Patton that was looking at this and did an outstanding job. Our solicitor, thank you. Betsy Dupree, thank you. Larry Pager, Director of Finance, thank you. Betsy Whitman, thank you. These individuals took it upon themselves to take a lot of heat for misinformation that was out there and to clear it up. I hope tonight with explanations as we move forward on this vote that it cleared up a lot of the misinformation that was throughout our region and caused many headaches. But tonight, as we all have researched, reviewed, and are about to vote, and we're voting for knowledge of this solar power purchase. Not by hearsay, but by fact. So Supervisor Whitman, if you would like to make that motion.
So I would like to move that the board approve Resolution 2024-18 to authorize our township manager to sign and execute the power purchase agreement contracts.
Is there a second? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Resolution 2024-18 is adopted. And thank you all for your hard work on this issue. Moving forward, next on the agenda is Resolution 2024-13, adopting the proposed 2025 township budget. Larry, I think you're on, and
Yeah, I
Amy.
believe I'm on again. So I'm going to do a small presentation before you have your public hearing on the budget, and then hopefully the board will move to adopt the 2025 budget, and followed by adopting the 2025 through 2029 capital improvement plan and the 2025 COG budget. Okay, so tonight, December 18th, we're here for a public hearing and a final adoption of the 2025 budget and the CIP. The 2025 budget has a 1 mil tax increase in real estate taxes proposed for 2025. That would raise our millage from 9.3 mils to 10.3 mils. We also have a 0.6 of a mil for open space preservation. Earned income tax is 0.5%. Local services tax is $52. And real estate transfer tax is 0.5%. And earned income tax, local services tax, and real estate transfer tax are at the maximum permitted by law. This is the breakdown, the allocation of the millage for 2025. We're looking at general millage of 7.6 mils, debt of 1.2 mils, the open space preservation of 0.6 of a mil, the library at 0.4 of a mil, parks capital improvements at 0.7 of a mil, and fire of 0.4 of a mil, totaling 10.9 mils. Revenues are proposed at just under $13 million. That's $6 million in real estate taxes, $350,000 in the open space preservation tax, just under $3 million in earned income tax, $1.1 million in other taxes, $1.7 million in intergovernmental payments, and $800,000 in non-tax sources. We're looking at $13.4 million in expenditures. This is $1.7 million in general government, $4.1 million in police, just under $3 million in public works. Planning and zoning and parks and recreation would be $878,000. Other community services, $488,000. Our contribution to COG programs is $2.1 million. Debt service of $788,000, and open space debt service of $245,000. This is a graph that shows your tax dollar and where it goes, and you can see that 14 cents goes to general government and admin, and 31 cents goes to the police department, 22 cents goes to public works. So over half of it, 53 cents, is for services directly to the residents. The 15 cents is for planning and parks, 10 cents for other community, and 8 cents for debt and capital projects. Oops. I hit the wrong button. Okay, our 2025 personal costs and benefits. The budget has a proposed cost of living increase of 3.2% for non-uniform employees. In 2024, that was 4.3%. In 2023, it was 6.3%. And in 2022, it was There also is a 1.25% merit increase for the non-uniform employees, which they're eligible to receive on their anniversary date. The police contract, we're in the midst of, right in the middle of a 4-year contract, where we did 6% increase in 2023, a 5% increase in 2024, and a 4% increase in 2025 and 2026. This budget proposes the 4% increase. There is a 14.8% increase in our health insurance costs, of which non-uniform employees contribute 12% of that total cost, and uniform employees contribute 9%. This is our wages and benefits compared 2024 to 2025. So you can see that the increase, the 3.2% plus the 14.8% in healthcare, that increase totals $355,000, which equals about 0.6 mil. This is our COG contribution to COG programs. That is increasing $145,000 from 2024 to 2025, and that equals about 0.25 tenths of a mil, or hundredths of a mil, 0.2 tenths of a mil. Okay, so with the nearly $13 million in revenues and the $13.4 million in expenditures, we will be using fund balance of $448,000. We'll end our year projected cash balance at about $1.2 million, which is about 8.9% of our operating expenditures. And that is my presentation on the budget, and I'll accept any questions or comments.
Any questions at this time before I go into the public hearing? Seeing none, I'm going to open the floor to public hearing. The floor is now open for public comments. You have 5 minutes per person. Are there anyone in the public who would like to speak at this time?
There is no one online.
Oh, okay. I'm giving you a minute. Chime in. Okay, I'm getting ready to close the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments from the board at this time? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2024-13? Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I just want to make clear, we need to increase these taxes.
Yes, so the tax increase is to cover our operating expenditures. Even if we did no projects next year, we would still need that 1 mil tax increase.
And this is in part, or probably fully, because over the previous years, we have not.
We have not raised taxes other than the small tax increase we had for 2024, which was 0.4 mil. We had not raised taxes since 2012.
And we have a lot of services that we offer.
There's a lot of services that we offer, plus increasing costs. And, you know, it caught up with us. It helped that we had the money from the American Rescue Plan Act. That helped us to continue to pay our expenditures. However, that money has been depleted, and now, you know, if we want to maintain the services that we have and not have to lay off police officers, you know, canine officers, and public works employees, and of course, directors of finances. We don't want to lay into that. We would need to have a tax increase for 2025. And I think if you read papers from locally and from around the state, you'll find that this is common all the way from the southwest of Pennsylvania to the northeast of Pennsylvania. Many counties and municipalities are increasing taxes this year after going many years without tax increases.
And we have been fiscally responsible.
We have been
And
fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
We are serving our public in a good way, and this idealistic view of no taxes, cutting taxes, it's literally going to then have to come at a cost to some of these other things
Yeah.
that we don't want to do away with.
And I think we also want to stress that we try to provide the highest quality services we can to our residents at the lowest possible cost. We're very, understanding of the fact that we're holding public funds, right? And we try to use those public funds judiciously, and we're not frivolous in our spending. What we found, though, just like in our own personal budgets, where our food budget may have grown, our electricity may have grown, our costs have gone up. And when we were looking at the budget this year, we looked long and hard to see what we could cut, because we didn't want to have to impact folks, because we know folks are also dealing with this in their own right at their homes. So it's not frivolous things that we're funding, it's just trying to maintain the quality of services that we provide to our residents. And, with this tax increase, we hope to continue to get back on a path where we won't need to do this. But to your point, Supervisor Magruder, it's not a feather in someone's cap to say you haven't raised taxes in X number of years, because you're buying services in today's dollars with dollars that are equal to money from whenever the last time was that you raised taxes. So that doesn't always work out in the end, and then you have these larger increases. So we're committed to continuing to provide the best quality services we can to our residents and to making sure we're using their money appropriately.
Any other discussion? That was Supervisor Abrams.
Just want to remind everybody that we realize we're not perfect in providing our services, and that if anyone has any comments or suggestions, we want to hear them.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Supervisor Whitman?
Very, very well spoken, both of you, and anyone who's made a comment about the efforts that the board, or I should say the efforts that our finance director and manager together have made. And you talk about providing the best quality. I'd also like to add that we provide it in a timely manner, because I recall that a couple of years ago, actually every year, as far as back as I remember, we have delayed projects to
Yes.
come in under budget, but there comes a point where you can't delay. So timely is also, needs to be added to quality. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. 2024-13, adopting the 2025 township budget. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is Resolution 2024-14, adopting the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan.
Okay, so the board reviewed the 2025-2029 capital improvement plan at the October 23rd and the November 13th meeting. The plan's now ready for adoption. I would recommend that the board make a motion and approve the resolution 24-14.
All right. Are there any questions before we vote? Can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-14?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The Resolution 2024-14 is passed and adopted. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2024-15, adopting the 2025 COG budget. Amy?
Okay, the general forum approved the 2025 COG budget at its meeting on October 28th and referred it to the municipalities for adoption. If the board's comfortable with the 2025 COG budget, a motion could be made to approve Resolution 2024-50.
Okay, any questions? Supervisor Abrams.
I'd like to make that motion.
All right, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes for Resolution 2024-15 is adopted. All right, next on the agenda is Resolution 2024-16, setting the property tax rates.
Okay, the board having adopted the 2025 budget with its proposed rate, a proposed increase in general real estate millage by 1 mil. If the board is comfortable, the real estate millage proposed for 2025, a motion could be made to approve Resolution 2024-16.
Okay, any questions? Supervisor Whitman,
I'd like to make the motion.
can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I
Supervisor
just have a
Whitman?
procedural question. We did formally approve the budget, which included the increase in millage, but here we're voting on it separate.
resolution.
Second
Okay.
class township code requires it.
Thank you for that. Just my education. Thank you.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution 2024-16 is passed and adopted. All right. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is public safety. Chief Jolly, your monthly report.
All right, thank you very much. November was a very busy month for the police department. In my report, you'll note that our officers stopped 160 vehicles. We wrote 20 traffic citations, 5 parking tickets, handled 17 criminal arrests, and our bike patrol took advantage of a nice day and got out and did 7 miles, 15 business checks, handled an incident, and a vacation home check. Under department notes, a 69-year-old female was charged with theft by deception. The victim in this case reached out to our agency and stated that she had paid a female over $1,500 for a trip to Italy. The defendant in this case owns a travel company, and she neglected to book the entire trip. Unfortunately for our victim, they found this out when they landed in Italy, that there was no lodging or travel home accommodations were booked. So she was kind of in a tough spot there, but we did get that arrest cleared out for her. A 21-year-old male was charged with theft and receiving stolen property. He had removed a decoration from a township store that was valued at over $400. Our detectives did a really nice job on identifying the male, and arrangements were made for that item to be returned to the store in addition to the arrest. We did make 7 arrests for retail theft, 1 for driving under the influence. We served 1 warrant of the 3 warrants that we attempted, and we conducted 29 vacation home checks. And obviously a lot of people traveling, so if you want to fill out a vacation home check form, go to our website. It's very easy. Plug in some information, and our officers will keep an eye on your residents while you're away if you're traveling for the holidays. So please take advantage of that. We enjoy providing that service. Under use of force, we did use force during 3 incidents in the month of November. The first was a domestic dispute with a family where a male was being combative and violent with some other family members. Our officers arrived and were met by a family member at the door stating to hurry because he needs help. There was another family member who was holding the male down. So our officers separated the 2 family members and attempted to verbally de-escalate that situation. They were not successful. The male grew increasingly agitated, eventually throwing a glass jar at one of our officers. Luckily, that did not hit him. However, the male then lunged at the officer, trying to knee the officer, and then he eventually did grab a hold of the officer and headbutted him. The other officer that was on scene deployed a taser at the male and hit him in the back. That did subdue the male and allowed our officers to be able to handcuff him and get him under control. EMS arrived on scene, and unfortunately the male's behavior did not get better as he was handcuffed, so they just made the decision to sedate him at the scene. He was then transported by ambulance to Mountaineer Medical Center for treatment. It was later found out that the male had taken and was under the influence of methamphetamine. He was arrested for aggravated assault on a police officer, simple assault and harassment, and thankfully there was no injuries reported by either the male or by the officer that was struck by the male. We were dispatched to Penn Highlands for an intoxicated, disorderly female patient. She was yelling vulgarities and being combative with staff. Our officers again attempted to verbally de-escalate the female, but due to her level of intoxication was not successful in that attempt. Staff discussed restraining and sedating her. She began to get aggressive with staff, so our officers had to physically intervene by grabbing the female's arm and shoulder her, escorting her away from staff at the hospital and into a room in bed. She was eventually sedated and did fall asleep. Again, no injuries reported in that one. And then lastly, our officers responded to a report of a student who was experiencing a mental health episode walking away from one of our elementary school here. The officers did a great job locating that individual, and then we waited for the parents to arrive. I said we because I was actually at this scene as well. Our officers attempted to verbally coax the juvenile into the mother's vehicle when she arrived. Eventually he did jump into her car, but then quickly tried to exit out the other side. And luckily we had an officer standing on the other side of the vehicle that kind of just stopped him from jumping out of the other side of the car. Eventually was fully put into the vehicle, and parents took him home. Again, no injuries reported. I did receive a phone call from the mother about a week after this, thanking us for our response and for the care and compassion that we afforded this situation, and she just really appreciated how we dealt with this situation, and like I said, took the time to reach out to me. Under community relations, Officer Tuskovich had a very busy month. He visited the preschool class out at Sinclair IU10 at the Matterville School, gave presentations about drugs and alcohol to the 7th grade workforce middle school health classes, gave an active shooter presentation at the Good Shepherd Catholic Church. He said that was very well attended. They opened up attendance to other congregations and other members of the community. So he said it was a really fantastic event and great questions and very engaging. So again, he's always available to provide that training to businesses, houses of worship, anybody who's interested. We're happy to provide that. He also attended a social media presentation for parents at State Height. And our officers were very active on Black Friday, patrolling the lots and also doing walkthroughs of a lot of the big box stores we have in the township, just showing the police presence for the very, very busy morning that we had on Black Friday shopping. Under training department activities, our officers attended tactical response team training. Officer Snyder and Graff completed their 2 days of required training. Graff was deployed on 3 separate occasions to track individuals. He was utilized to conduct a narcotics sweep of the Center County Correctional Facility, and then he also assisted the Center County Drug Task Force on a traffic stop. On that traffic stop, he alerted on the vehicle. Search warrant of the vehicle was done later after a search warrant was secured, and 6 grams of methamphetamine and various items of drug paraphernalia were located, and 2 arrests were made. I attended the Big Brothers Big Sisters Advisory Council meeting, Humane Society Police Officer meeting, Happy Valley Business Association meeting, and the Community and Campus Immunity meeting. We have a couple photos. We just talked about Graff and the success he had on a traffic stop. So the first photo is of the 6 grams of methamphetamine that he located in that vehicle, and then the second one is of the drug paraphernalia that was located in that vehicle as well. We had a performance report, and we talk about the services and the service we provide to our community. Whenever we have a performance report, I'm always really excited to share that with the community, with the board. But on November 1st, Officer Vardzell and Officer Carter responded to a residence in Patton Township for a report of a male in cardiac arrest. Upon arrival, the two officers found that the patient was not breathing and had no pulse. The officers attached the AED to the victim and it advised that no shock should be delivered, so they began CPR. Officer Vardzell conducted chest compressions while Officer Carter administered oxygen. They continued CPR until they were relieved by EMS. Happily, the patient eventually regained pulse and was transported to the hospital for more advanced care. So due to the quick actions of Officer Vardzell and Officer Carter, a patient who was in cardiac arrest was revived to the point where they could be transported to the hospital for more advanced medical care. And their actions truly do reflect the highest credit on themselves and on our agency. And we received a really nice note from a mother. Her son was involved in a hunting accident out in the Scotia game lands, where actually a sharp object pierced his leg. So Officer Sunderland, and she was very apologetic. She singled out Officer Sunderland. It was actually Officer Sunderland and Officer Brooks that were there. But they arrived on scene and actually did end up putting a tourniquet on his leg because he was bleeding profusely. He was flown by Life Flight, but she was just very appreciative of the calm demeanor that the officers had in treating him and knowing what they needed to do in that emergency situation. But also the fact that while they were there waiting for EMTs and the medics and Life Flight to arrive, Officer Sunderland was on the phone with this individual, constantly giving her reports about what was going on, where he was going, things like that. So she just wrote a really, really nice note thanking the officers for their help that day. Lastly, we have our record list of calls for service. In the month of November, we had 539 calls, down a little bit from October when we had 574. Again, very active in the schools. 100 of those were school checks, and 57 were health and safety EMS assists. And that completes my report.
Okay. Chief, I also want to thank you and officers for the donation for the holiday, for the the single mother and her son. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for making the connection for us, and that worked out fantastic. We took care of that on Monday, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Definitely individuals in need. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Next on the agenda is Public Works, Operations. There are no items. Next is Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. The Planning Commission report, since they did not meet in December, we're moving on to rezoning requests for 474 and 480 Douglas Drive. Amy, I think, and
I will
Jenna?
start this and then Jenna's going to
Yes.
take over. I would just like to kind of give you a little bit of history. We received a request, the board may remember, from Sam Hobbaker to rezone these two properties. They're on the corner of Douglas Drive and Atherton Street. They're currently zoned low-density residential, and after discussing it, and Jenna will go into this in her report, we had looked at rezoning the properties from Galen Drive to Douglas Drive from low-density residential to office buffer district. We did receive a couple of public comments today from folks who saw the agenda, and I want to maybe alleviate some concerns that folks had. The action that you're being asked to take tonight is not to actually physically rezone these properties. It's to consider if you want to move this forward to be properly considered by the Center Region Planning Commission, and then also to have the properties posted to hold a public hearing and to do a formal consideration on the rezoning. That's a very prescribed process, which Jenna will get into under the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code, and notifications are required to property owners. So hopefully I touched base with all the residents that we heard from today to let them know. And we did put, thanks to the efforts of Sophie, who jumped on this right away, we put some information out on Nextdoor and our social media and our website to let folks know that this is actually what's happening and to clarify what we're looking into. So folks will have an opportunity to provide their input as well. So with that, I'll turn this over to Jenna to go through her report.
Great. You gonna drive later? Or you
Yeah.
want me to share?
I can, well, if you share, it won't show up there.
No, never mind then. You're driving.
But I can drive.
Okay, perfect.
Just give me a ding when you want me to change.
All right, so I am back again, this time with the expanded analysis of this whole block area from Galen down to Douglas. You can go to the next one. We have all of the parcels listed on page 2, as well as the map of the area on page 3. I do want to note, 4 of these parcels are owned by Patton Township. They do have deed restrictions on them. They need to remain as open space. They cannot be developed or be used for anything else than that. So those are the 4 parcels that you see to the right of the church. And then from that point on to the very skinny parcel. The other note, when we went out and did our, I'd say, field view of this property, you'll see on page 5, there is significant topography change on the, I would say, the largest parcel. With the potential for development, there's a lot that would need to be overcome and a lot of stormwater analysis if that were to be developed. So that was one thing that we did see when we went out there, which really brings us down to the 2 parcels along Douglas, which was the original request. The owner originally requested commercial. Unfortunately, these lots are far too small to even be considered for that zoning district. So we looked at other types of zoning districts that the township has. We ended up with office buffer district. It is actually, in my opinion, a perfect answer for these parcels directly abutting Atherton and a neighborhood. That is why this ordinance was written that way. They have a lot of requirements. I actually have a couple of comparison, but Larry doesn't have a PowerPoint. But if he goes to page, let me find it, 13, we are comparing essentially the uses that are permitted in R2 in comparison to the office buffer district. The one thing that I did want to highlight that is within the narrative, but not in this little chart, as I call it, cheat sheet. The one thing that stood out to me with the office buffer district, whatever zoning district is directly abutting it, in this case that is R2, the permitted height for buildings for these properties would have to match that zoning district that's directly adjacent. So for R2, that's 30 feet for height. So we wouldn't have the issue of taller buildings over houses. Additionally, the zoning district requires a lot of buffer plantings and landscaping requirements in this zoning district. Frankly, we're discussing the 2 Douglas properties. Given the topography on that larger lot next to them, Patton Township owns the rest of them, and then we have the church. It's established, it's not changing. So there isn't really enough area to get a significant size building, and even if the owner could make it work, he would need to match the height that is permitted in the residential district right next door. The other thing that I found fascinating about this zoning district, they have requirements for hours of operations for these businesses that are here. That's 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. You are not allowed to store anything outside. Everything has to be located within the business. So that was one thing that we really did like about this district in particular. It's kind of that nice mix. It respects the fact that it is there as a buffer between a majorly trafficked corridor and a neighborhood. They require building design aesthetics with this zoning district. And then again, the landscaping, all season ground cover, which means that it will need to be a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees, so you will have that buffer all year round between these properties. There are additional buffer requirements in the zoning district along Atherton. It's 15 feet, nothing can be located. So as I talk about all these requirements, these 2 lots on the end, the developable area gets smaller and smaller. So for us, it was a safe, I'd say a safe idea to put forward to give these properties something else other than R2. Please note that a single-family home is permitted in office buffer districts, so we're not creating any nonconformities with this zoning change either. It's permitted in both. And it's really going to come down to if the property owner can make it work. And a lot of what Planning Commission discussed was exactly what Amy alluded to, that educational piece. So I had Summer Brown, our land use planner, do a 2-pager, just all the requirements to rezone properties for state law. It's very similar to the zoning hearing board. You have to have a public hearing, it has to be advertised 2 consecutive weeks. The extra step with the map amendment is we have to go out there and physically post the properties. I think Planning Commission did not even want to move forward with that until that proper education, so whether that was targeted mailings to the properties, etc. As Amy already stated, that is required when you rezone a property. You have to provide that information in certified mail to the neighbors, so they would be notified that this is being considered if it were to move that far. Again, we're not there. Given the PED and traffic interactions at that corner, if that property were developing, that we'd need significant upgrades, and that would be borne by the developer. I did notice that there is a capital improvement project for this intersection to improve those issues. So I'm not saying it's the answer, we should do this. I think all staff have looked at other zoning districts, and we feel that this is the best one if you were looking to change from R2. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Supervisor Magruder, I see your hand up first.
I feel like I'm talking a lot today.
Good.
And I wanted to be responsive to residents and their concerns. And so let's just boil it down. Because we saw some concerns about drainage and sinkholes. A lot of the concerns, though, were about not wanting to eliminate housing, affordable housing. And in this particular plot, we had 2 homes. And so can you just take those concerns and weigh them against the benefits or why we might want to change this?
It's my understanding, I don't believe the owner wants to continue with the trailers at those locations. So I think
Say that again?
The property owner does not want to continue having those homes at those 2 properties.
There are maintenance concerns with the homes at the properties. That's what and the property owner wasn't able to attend this evening, but he is aware that you're discussing it. But he is not able to maintain the homes that are on that property, and I think he's been looking for a different avenue for that property for a while. Jenna noted, and Nicole, we've discussed this internally, there's a lot of constraints with the lots up there and then being on the corner at Atherton. The other thing that we've discussed internally as well is that the nature of Atherton Street itself is changing, right? We have what I jokingly call the big box corridor with all the larger stores, but then on either side of that, the industrial area that's down in this part of Atherton Street, that's largely going to change over the next probably 10 to 15 years, right? That just the zoning needs to get changed along there as well. So I think when we were looking at office buffer, and I appreciate the concerns about the housing, right? That's something significant that we're going to be talking about in the new year, but this district does allow for houses as well. And the commercial uses that it allows for are very, very less intensive than what you'll find further on up in the corridor. So if I'm a resident and I live in the adjacent neighborhood, I'm not going to have a fast food restaurant on that corner, which is going to cause all kinds of traffic concerns. And also having the hours of operation in the ordinance and the requirements about not storing materials outside further protects the integrity of the residential properties behind it. So I certainly understand the concerns. This is probably the 4th or 5th time this property owner has come in to ask for a rezoning. I think he's looking for some more flexibility with the property that he has now, and trying to find an avenue. And I think this still provides for housing. I think he's going to find the commercial piece of it, the professional office piece of it may be difficult to do, but that's because the lots have some constraints on them. But I also think that as we move forward, and this is something that I know the MPO's discussed, it's something that I, for whatever reason, have decided I want to fix Atherton Street, and I don't know that it's fixable, but looking at the whole corridor from Patton Township through to the borough and all the zoning, the ingress, the egress, because it's just a hodgepodge right now, and it could be a more coordinated corridor. And as we look at redevelopment opportunities, and we're seeing a lot of redevelopment pressure through that entire corridor, not just this section, and making thoughtful decisions to kind of reboot that corridor and see how we want that to look into the future.
Any other questions on this side? Supervisor Abrams?
Well, I really haven't heard any suggestion that would solve that problem of the, in that zone.
Elliot.
By rezoning it.
Elliot,
Can you speak into the
up
mic?
into the mic.
How
Thank
about if I speak into the mic?
Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't heard anything that actually argues for why we should do anything with this right now, because we're not really solving any problems just yet. And I think that they've raised the issue of possible flooding, and I think we should answer that to one, what is the real threat? Is there no threat? Is it a minor threat? Or is it real?
Well, so I think it's important to remember, and Jenna can step in if I'm saying anything out of turn, but when you're looking at a rezoning, you're really not looking at the things that are specific to a property in terms of traffic, flooding, stormwater concerns, right? Those are things that are addressed during a plan review stage. So you shouldn't be, in my mind at least, and again, Jenna and Betsy can chime in here, but you shouldn't be making your decision based on the potential for a drainage issue, because that can be addressed through development on the property. You should be looking at the whole of the use of the property and all of the uses that you're letting in if you change the zoning. So that would be how you would want to weigh if you want this to move forward, right? You want to look at, do you want to have possibly professional office buildings on that corner? What's around that area? There's residential properties behind, there's office buildings across the street, the Goodwill stores across the street, there's restaurants. So you want to look at the whole of the uses that you're potentially allowing versus some of the more microcosm, little, not little, but smaller concerns that are specific to a specific property.
Any other questions? Supervisor Whitman?
Yeah. So would housing above the first floor of any business that would be there, would that be allowed in the buffer zone?
I don't believe mixed use is allowed in office buffer district.
You don't, you say you'd know.
It's not allowed.
Okay.
So they can either maintain the homes as is, or they can have other, I would call low intensity office
Okay.
types of uses.
I'm trying to think of other buffer office zone. Is Trader Joe's area, is that the considered office buffer zone?
No,
What's
the center, the spot out here across
Yeah.
from, Greg Geisinger is office buffer, the Hallbaker building and the parcels adjacent to that. I don't know how far that goes up along Laurel Road, office
Oh,
buffer.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, I understand the concern of the property owner, especially with the, I guess, physical difficulties of maintaining the property. And if we didn't, I'm just thinking out loud here, if we didn't rezone it in the spirit of maintaining land possibly for affordable housing, would then the landowner presumably still be able to sell that property? Someone could purchase and put a house on it. But that wouldn't necessarily mean that that housing would be, if a new house was built, it would be affordable.
I highly doubt it since it's in a floodplain.
Yeah.
When you look at the price of flood insurance, add that into the cost of a home, you're either gonna end up with what you have there, which are modular homes that are transient in nature,
Yeah.
or, I can't see someone putting on a pretty, a home that has
Okay.
significance. And keep in mind, the flood, I'm sure what the developer's looking at is that the flood insurance requirements apply to residential properties. It doesn't mean that there aren't flood insurance complications for an office, okay, that's all I'm saying. But in terms of dealing with the National Flood Insurance Program, that's a residential program. Those prices are all set by FEMA and probably will go up after North Carolina. And so consequently, if you're in an office, you can place, so that it would provide a potential to do something different on that site. But as Jenna has pointed out, this is not a zoning district that will make whatever that something is easier necessarily. At the same time, you know, across the street is a commercial property. Those folks look out their window and they see it. I'm not talking about the Goodwill store, I'm talking about the Midas that's been there since it was I think a gas station at the time.
Yeah. And that's,
in the old days of Park Forest.
yeah, and that's commercial.
Yeah.
That's
That is
zoned
commercial.
commercial.
That whole piece of
That whole-
Atherton is commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supervisor Abrams, and then I would like to speak on this.
I guess I guess there are two basic issues here. One is repeatedly, we've gotten requests to change the zoning. And on the one hand, you would think, well, why are we so stubborn as to not do that? On the other hand, have we actually made a mistake? We've reaffirmed the same idea each time, and maybe changing it now, that would be the mistake. I don't know the right answer to that, but I think they're two totally separate possibilities, and just change for change's sake, that doesn't make any sense. I think if we changed it, and the part of the rest of the street there were changed, that would be worth studying. But we haven't heard that proposal.
Thank you. Most of you know my position on sinkholes. And as it was explained to me, this is just the process. It's not the end all. Once the decision is made to just move it to the planning board. So I'm looking at, you know, moving it to the planning board, having the public come out and speak on this. And those of you who know me on sinkholes, I will be there to make sure, because I do not want to go through, and I talked to our township manager, and those of you who have been on this board know me as far as it was an education for our residents that went through the sinkhole situation. I wish that on no one. The education piece of the insurance companies turning our individuals, our residents down that thought they were covered. You know, and then the added expenses as they were trying to get back in their homes. The history of sinkholes in this area, you know, flooding in this area. I'm saying, let's move it forward. Let the public come out and voice their concerns so we can address it and look for an answer before making any other decision on this. Legally, Betsy, I don't know what the answer is as we're moving forward into finding a solution to rezoning?
I don't think there's I mean, it's your choice. Rezoning is strictly in the governance of the board, so if you don't want to push the matter forward, you can make that action. If you want to push it forward and still vote against it at the time it comes to you in the form of an ordinance, there's no legal action that can be taken. I mean, I shouldn't say, there are creative ways that lawyers come, but generally speaking, the issue to rezone my property is not a mandatory consideration on your part.
And that's what I needed to know. You know, once we can move this forward to the planning commission and have our residents who have these concerns to come out, you know, and then bring it back to our board so we can decide then. But for right now, it's just the process, and I want that clear. It's the process that we're going to go through to make sure the dots are dotted and the Ts are crossed. So if there's no other, no,
I would just
Supervisor.
quickly to your question about sinkholes, and I think Jenna pointed this out. This office buffer district gives you much more control than you have right now in R2.
Okay,
So if somebody wanted to put a home up on there, I gave you the floodplain issues, but that's not a township regulation. That's an Army Corps of Engineer issue.
okay,
And so if there are sinkholes or there are issues with water drainage that are created by putting a new home on there that's bigger and has a bigger driveway, that is not going to be something you guys get to play with. But if I come in and offer buffer district, now all bets are off. Now I get a full-blown land development plan. I have to do stormwater. You know, so if the issues that come out in the public conversation is really we're concerned about water issues at that corner, then redevelopment of that corner, to the extent it's practical and can be done, will enable you to use your stormwater ordinance to deal with stormwater issues.
great. Thank you, I needed that. Supervisor Whitman, then Supervisor Magruder.
I just wanted to note that, that the comment about the sinkhole was simply made by a resident who used to live here. So I think everybody now is talking about sinkholes in general, but I don't think they necessarily are speaking from a scientifically educated perspective that they think there's sinkholes there. But I
Okay.
like the idea. Yeah, so I think we need to keep that in mind.
Okay,
We shouldn't, yeah.
Supervisor Magruder?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with, pushing this forward to the planning commission for more review, and I forget what the process is if, during the planning commission's review, if they're soliciting feedback from the residents, or do they do the report and then recommendations, and then we open it up for review?
So we've been through, this process has kind of been going on for a couple months now. It's been through our planning commission, and they've reviewed Jenna's report and made the recommendation back. So now it goes up to the CRPC because the state law says it has to be reviewed by the CRPC. We can kind of concurrently with that going to CRPC, put out, and this is what we did with the radio station when that was being considered for rezoning. We can put out information to residents and encourage them. And I've been today I was sending out the office buffer zoning district regulations to residents so they could see exactly what would be proposed, could be proposed if the zoning was changed. So we can do some engagement, and then they would have an opportunity through CRPC to speak if they wanted to say anything. But then also the board would schedule a public hearing, and we would probably want to wait until February to do that at the earliest, depending on CRPC's schedule. But they would have a public hearing, and that's an opportunity for the residents to speak. And then the board can make a decision after that.
And you'll have a PC meeting too. Your PC has to look at the ordinance.
Yes, the PC would have to look at
Our
the,
PC, so there would be a Ferguson, or
Yeah,
Patton
so-
Township PC meeting, plus you have the Center Region PC,
Yep.
And
plus
then
the
back-
board. So
okay.
you'll have multiple opportunities.
yeah, lots of
For
opportunities.
people to speak.
And what we did in the past, the last time, we had a QR code that we sent out to the adjacent property owners, and it linked straight back to our website with all the information so people could present, could send us comments, could read what was being developed, what was being proposed and discussed, and we would do something similar here as well.
Yeah, that's all wonderful, and I just think getting ahead of it, any sort of angst or confusion among residents is the best case. And I think, to Elliot's point as well, if residents can have a more informed, picture of like visioning and what is possible and the benefits of that, I think that's going to just be helpful in staving off any, you know, questions, concerns that may be sort of like unfounded at this point. And, you know, some of the things that you've already mentioned being, you know, some buffering, right, to preserve, you know, the integrity of the community. That could be helpful. The uniformity amongst, you know, the different, you know, businesses and stuff like that on Atherton. And so, yeah, I think all that stuff will just be helpful.
Supervisor Whitman?
No, I'd just like to give further clarification, because I'm thinking of this as the request for rezoning has come from the owner who clearly wishes to have, or not clearly, who probably wishes to have a higher value assigned to that property, and/or is simply wishing to solve a problem because he cannot maintain the two mobile homes as they are currently. But if we did not approve the zoning, the owner of the two properties would have several options left still, and I'm looking at the value of the property. Okay, be able to put new mobile homes on or build, right? But so there's the value of the property to the owner, and then there's the value of the property to the community. And that's what we're considering when we're considering a zoning change. And so I'm realizing there's, it's not black and white. It's, you know, I want to be sympathetic to both needs, I guess is what I'm saying. And yeah, I don't know if there's any conclusion to that. I guess I just needed some clarification about the options to the owner if we did not rezone. Okay. But there'd be considerable difficulty perhaps putting a house on, much more so than a mobile home.
Well, I think it's a matter that the mobile home is mobile, so if you have flooding or those kinds of issues. And I don't know the age of those homes, but they're not young homes, which means, that you can't, they're not, so mobile homes, sadly, I think we all learned this when we had several parks here that had to be moved, they are not like old cars. You can't buy parts and fix them up.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how to say that, but
Yeah.
you just, they're not people who deal in that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So if their manufacturer is out of business, for example, which frequently happens, any kind of that's really true with any kind of manufactured housing. They're, you know, depending on how long, I mean, Ritz-Craft, which is across the mountains, lasted the longest of a lot of them. So it means that those would go away, and potentially a new one, at least with this owner, that he's probably not gonna, since he hasn't done it already, put a nice home on those two lots. And again, I'm sure that's because of the flood zone issues.
Okay.
You know, the cost to deal with flood insurance there would be not insignificant. And I'm sure there are residents around there that have some flood issues, but I don't think the zone extends, even though it remember, these FEMA maps, unless you ask to have them updated, are old.
Yep.
Or you have a major catastrophic flood, and then they go to the valley and, you know.
Bless you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I just agree with moving it forward and up to CRP.
Wait, what'd you say?
I'm sorry.
I said I just agree with moving it forward for further study up to the Center County Planning Commission.
You disagree?
No, he agrees.
I'm in favor of
You
moving
just
forward.
agree.
Yep.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing.
No, I don't hear anything. It's fine.
Okay.
Supervisor Whitman, I'm sorry, Elliot, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
I may just have the wrong idea about this, but I seem to remember this, that when we said we weren't going to allow the zoning that the owner wanted, they said, well, then we'll just put a mobile home in there. And I read that as being a little spiteful. But maybe I was totally wrong in thinking that. And so I agree with looking at it again. But if I was right, then I don't think the answer should be any different.
I have a question to Township Manager. They said it was mentioned that the owner was turned down several times.
Yes. Yeah, he's tried to rezone, this is obviously all predates me, but I think he's tried I'm looking at Betsy, 4 or 5 times? And
It's been over a 15-year period, as I
And he
recall.
Really?
tried to go to commercial most of those times.
Each
And
time
I,
he asked for commercial, yeah.
yeah, I think his last iteration of this, when he came in, I believe the former township manager had said office buffer district might be your best option to get it into something that would give you a commercial option piece to it, because office buffer is the least intense uses. But I don't think he desires to hang on to these properties as residential. I don't think that's in his game plan.
No, my concern was, why was he turned down so many times?
I think he was turned down before because he was looking at, again, more intensive commercial uses. And
Okay.
that was, I believe the last time, I think Elliot remembers this, the last time the neighbors came out in force because they really didn't want commercial uses right there.
Okay.
So, and that, I think that's why office buffer was the suggestion, because again, it was the less intense of the uses.
Okay. So not to prolong this, what is the board's pleasure? Do we move this forward to the planning commission? Or do you say it stops here?
I mean, it seems like it may also be in our best interest as a municipality with that corridor, like we have a vision for that. I think more clearly communicating what that vision looks like can be helpful. So I don't see this as just like a perk for the, resident owner who may be able to sell the property for more if we, rezone it. This seems like it could be a benefit to the township, to potentially the owner of the parcel, and also the community members who live adjacent to that, and being able to have some type of separation between North Atherton and their community. So I agree with moving it forward.
Moving it forward. Sure. Is it the board's pleasure to move this forward?
We're not making a decision.
We're not making a decision, we're just
Sending it for further
sending it
discussion.
forward. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Next on the agenda is administration. There's no items, and...
Oh, no, there's items, sorry. I forgot to delete
Thank
the no
you.
items. Sorry about that.
Yes.
End of the year, our UAJ reps have hung in this entire meeting.
I am so sorry. I said I was trying to get you out of here, but I apologize. Next on the agenda is engaging the fiduciary for the township retirement plan.
Yeah, so
Amy?
I'll take this, and then Larry can answer any questions too that you may have. So we currently maintain 2 retirement plans for our employees. These plans are provided through Mission Square, which used to be known as ICMA-RC, and they've largely been managed in-house in terms of we kind of make sure the paperwork's all done. They've been in place for many years, and we've never actually had them comprehensively reviewed. So we feel this way because Mission Square, when they changed from ICMA-RC, our employees are no longer getting financial wellness counseling or retirement planning counseling that we used to get under the old provider. And also, we've never really looked at the plans to see what kind of costs we're incurring, what kind of costs our employees are paying to be a part of the different funds. So we talked with Pat Geary from Cornerstone Wealth. Pat is the fiduciary for Harris Township, State College Borough, and Ferguson Township. And I was in Harris when he came in as the fiduciary. The process that he uses is awesome in that it creates an employee retirement committee. And so they have a couple members, I think Ferguson has 5 members of their staff on their committee, and they work with him to actually review the plans, set goals for the plans. Then they'll determine together if we should go out and actually try to find a new provider, if we should change the plans in some way. And he also provides financial wellness counseling. So our employees would have someone to talk to about their retirement goals and how they want to get where they need to be. So he gave us a proposal for $16,500 for the next year to serve as our fiduciary. As I mentioned, it's an employee-driven process, which is one of the things I like about it. And I think it'll be something good for our employees to have buy-in to that whole process itself. So we're just recommending that you move forward with engaging Mr. Geary and with starting the process of looking at our retirement plans.
Okay. Any board member have a comment or question? Supervisor Whitman.
Do we currently, so we currently don't have a physical person?
We don't have a fiduciary now.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, can I get a motion to engage Mr. Pat Geary from Cornerstone Worth as a township's fiduciary?
So
Okay.
move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Question, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes to engage Pat Geary as from Cornerstone Wealth as the township fiduciary. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the 2025 sewer rate increase.
You're up. Dave and Jeff are here. They are our reps to UAJA, and they're coming at the request of Chair Rob because we've had some residents who've asked questions about the UAJA sewer rate increases. So if you gentlemen want to step to the microphone.
Gentlemen, I apologize for keeping you so long, but
Sure, no problem.
you're on.
Tonight was also our budget meeting as well, and we had about as many people from the public attending.
Okay.
Would you like to start?
I'll start. My name is David Durr. I'm the Vice Chairman, UAJA. You can introduce yourself.
I'm Jeff Nucciarone. I'm actually the treasurer on the board, UAJ.
And we're here to answer some questions pertaining to the rate increase that we unfortunately had to put through to all of our customers. Jeff is going to start with a timeline, and then we're here to answer any
Actually,
and all questions.
I forgot on my timeline to include the important item was when we passed, UAJA passed a budget in 2021 that changed the way the borough of State College was billed. Formerly, they were volumetric at a rate that included only conveyance and treatment. All other customers pay conveyance, treatment, and collection. Since the borough does their own collection, they're not charged for that part of the bill, but it was a volumetric rate. And in the 2021 budget, that was switched to an EDU rate. The borough, after the fact, I believe, objected to it being EDUs, not volumetric, as well as the rate increase itself. At the time, it represented a 17% rate increase. When that budget was voted on at the UAJA, the borough's representative actually voted with the majority in passing that budget. They only had one representative on the board at the time. Their second seat was vacant. But their one representative did vote to pass the budget, but then afterward, the borough started with their, about not wanting to pay not only the rate increase, but at the EDU rate, not the volumetric rate. So they were withholding payment beyond what they thought they should have been paying. So we were receiving something, not the whole thing. Unfortunately, it left a big hole in the budget, which was being covered with by reserves and moving some other things around inside the budget. After a lot of back and forth, we eventually said, all right, we're going to go to court. We're in mediation right now, or I should say mediation right now, with the borough. It's ongoing. There's an interim agreement in place where they at least paid, I believe it was $2.5 million that they owed. That did not include the penalties and interest. So they just brought everything current up to that point. But that still doesn't address the fact that going forward, they're still not paying the gap. So there's been yet another rate increase that we passed last year that they're also not paying as part of this. So even though they caught up to that point, there's still this ongoing hole. But we did sign an interim agreement, at least as part of the mediation, that said that, okay, we'll accept that was in order to get that money, but that we're continuing to accept the fact that they're not paying what they're being actually billed. Because of that, we can't go and book that income as we had been able to do in the past, even though they were not paying it. So our bond agencies are saying, you need to have sufficient cash reserves based on what the revenue should be. So that unfortunately means, right, as you know, you just went through the budget whole budget process. The budget's a balloon. If somebody isn't doing something over here, it's got to pop out over here. So unfortunately, it's the residents of Patton Township, College Township, Ferguson Township who are left footing the bill for the borough's, I don't know, intransigence at this point. Since we have an interim agreement, I got to bite my tongue and hold the rest of my opinions about what I think. I know Dave has some strong opinions about that as well. At tonight's, two things that happened at today's board meeting. Well, number one is we did pass our 2025 budget, which does include this rate increase. However, that increase could be rescinded if the borough, I'll say, comes to its senses and just agrees to pay what they owe us. Whether or not we decide to waive the penalties and interest or not is irrespective at this point. But if they were to at least continue paying at what the rate should be, which is an EDU rate, not a volumetric rate, we'll see what happens. The interim agreement at today's UAGA meeting, we agreed to extend it until March the 14th. March 14th seems like an odd date, but we're hopeful about the negotiations that are going on right now with the borough. They just want to have their consultant do yet another rate analysis, even though our consultant's done a rate analysis on what the rate should be for their treatment and conveyance. There's other issues with they had filed a lawsuit claiming that they've been overcharged, that they're paying for parts of the system that they don't have to. You could read the legal filing to see all their complaints on that. But anyway, before I completely lose my train of thought, the interim agreement has been extended to the 14th because we hopefully will know by that date in time for the board packet to go out for the next UAGA board meeting to be held that following Wednesday. If there's an agreement met by that time, the board can vote on rescinding the rate increase, which would go into effect for the billing that would go out on April the 10th for the first quarter of 2025. If we don't have an agreement by that date, rate increase will hit. That's about it. We can talk about why EDU rate versus volumetric rate. I can gladly show anyone a copy of the budget. 88% of the plant's costs are fixed, not volumetric. So whether you send a drop of sewage down the pipe or not, 88% of that bill has to go to pay for the operation of the plant. The 2025 budget breaks down in detail what costs are fixed, what costs are variable. We have high labor costs. We know you have high labor costs. That's part of what's driving your budget. Our collection system, our treatment plant, everything needs to be maintained. What happens if you don't invest in yourself? Well, look over the hill at the Rock Springs Water Company. That's what happens if you don't continue to invest. And then there's a huge rate shock to fix all the problems. We don't want to ever get there. So when we look at the capital projects and everything that's in place, there are things that just can't be deferred. We're replacing sewer mains all over town. We have crews TVing sewer mains. They're finding problems from 20 years ago that they're getting around to fixing. I think it was over by Science Park Road. They found a section of sewer main that actually did this underground. Able to fix that. These are things we wouldn't find or would become major problems later if we weren't paying for continual ongoing maintenance. just big thing in the CDT about a big capital improvement project we have going on. We're in year 2 of that project for the anaerobic digester. That's a revenue generating project. Once that's done, it's going to be making money for the authority. You know, the break-even point is years down the road. You've just gone through the same exercise with the solar power purchase agreement. You know, same thing, you know, it's payback is in a couple of years. You know, we just made the commitment to buy the first phase of our solar array. You know, the savings are, you know, the true savings will come, you know, several years down the road, closer than you think. It's hard to believe that we've already been running that system 6 years. This is the year that we elected to buy it from the private-public partnership. So that's how it is. You have anything else you want to add?
Just to give you a rough idea on sheer numbers, in our 2024 budget, our debt payment is $6.8 million. According to our indenture, we must maintain 10% above that to be sure our indenture is covered. That means we need to bring in $7.5 million to cover it. If we don't, we're in default. Our only out is to generate revenue elsewhere, and unfortunately, that's the townships. Us, you. So all of us are paying for this issue caused by the borough. Hopefully, as Jeff said, this will be resolved sooner than later. As of tonight, we have no guarantee whether that will happen. We have nothing written, any sort of guarantees from the borough.
The only thing I was hoping was that maybe COG could put pressure on the borough. Maybe the townships could put some pressure on the borough and say, hey, you know, if we want to use slightly stronger language, you're stealing from our residents by your intransigence. You know, it's kind of theft of services. I wish I could not pay the increase in my electric bill. What would happen if I told West Penn Power, you know what, I liked it when you only charged me 5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's all I'm going to pay you from now on. What do you think would happen? They turn my lights off. Now, I'm not going to pick on Supervisor Abrams, but if he decided he didn't want to pay a sewer bill anymore, we could have his water cut off and put a lien on him. But we won't do that because he will pay his bill. But when an entity like the borough won't pay its bill, we can't turn their water off. We can't seize the borough. I'd love to seize the borough building and put up a parking garage, but you know. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place with them. Yes.
Supervisor Whitman, I felt you behind
Can
my.
you refresh my memory on what the EDU, I know the volumetric, the EDU is essentially a hookup, so it would be a uniform price?
It's got an equivalent dwelling unit.
Equivalent
so
dwelling
Right, so
unit.
it's a fixed price. So residences are one EDU, one private home is one EDU. An efficiency apartment would be considered half an EDU. Where things get contentious is with non-residential, where businesses are billed based on a table that's actually put out by, I think, EPA or DEP, says that like a bowling alley is so many EDUs, a restaurant of X size is so many EDUs. So it's fixed based on that.
Okay. So it,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so what is the rate increase per resident? What is someone looking at in their bill?
We went from 109 to 121 or 122.
Supervisor,
Yeah. Now,
And
mind
you
you,
have-
for many years, we were able to get away without raising the rates at all, but unfortunately, the last 2 years, inflation caught up with us. A little bit of last year's rate increase could be attributed to the borough, but the majority of it was inflation. Of course, we had a union contract that, increased our labor costs, so, had to pay that. But this year, it's almost strictly from, we have to meet that bond indenture, requirement.
And is that monthly or, I have well water and
Oh.
septic, so.
It's a quarterly bill.
Okay.
So, yeah, we bill quarterly.
any other supervisors? Supervisor Abrams.
I have no answer there, except that the date you picked of March 14th is kind of
speak into your mic, please. Thank you.
The date you picked of March 14th for figuring this out is superstitious because, as Shakespeare said, beware the Ides of March. That's the very next day.
It's the very next day, yeah. Well, I wish you were at our meeting to warn us of that. We could have moved it to there. Yes.
And could you?
Supervisor
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Whitman, then Supervisor Magruder.
Did you? No, I just wondered if you could explain briefly why you're going to EDUs versus volumetric, and I assume it's probably something similar to what we had to weigh with the waste haul contract, or what Cataway's, that the primary expense in the waste is not the trash being picked up, but the paying personnel, paying and driving.
Yeah, with more, like I said, 88% of our costs are fixed.
Yeah.
And so, and
Thank
also
you.
hydraulics are actually not a very good proxy for
Yeah,
estimating
gotcha.
sewage, because it's biosolids are what you're more worried about.
Yep.
So even though your, water-saving toilet is now only, 1.6 gallons per flush instead of 5 gallons per flush, it really wasn't the water that incurs the expense at the plant. It's removing the biosolids.
Right, okay. So
And-
essentially, the
yeah.
borough feels that it,
Yeah, and one of the problems with that too is with the borough, let's look at 2020. Most of the borough's population is students. So when the students left, their volume went down, but our costs didn't go down. So, a volumetric rate puts the financial risk on the UAJ instead of the borough. They would rather somebody else have the financial,
which is why,
absorb that risk.
yeah, and
Yeah.
board just, and
Yeah.
just to maybe state the obvious, but in our waste management plan, we had to tell people who had a home and were only here a couple of weeks a year that they had to pay for the whole year because the truck still has to go by their house. Which is not exactly
Because the truck's
that.
going by their house, whether
Yeah,
they're there or not.
exactly.
And it's a capacity problem.
Same with people on vacation.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, I'm belaboring this,
no
but it's
problem.
interesting.
Yeah, sewage is a capacity. You're actually paying for capacity, not use. If we could use an example of Toff Trees. Toff Trees, the country club resort, or the restaurant, they can go days on end without sending a drop of sewer down the pipe. But we have to be ready to absorb 500 people, 1,000 people, all at once. So why their EDU rate is high is because it's capacity. We have to be ready to handle that.
Interesting. Thank you for all that explanation.
Supervisor Magruder,
I don't have any questions.
you should.
I'll pass you one you could ask.
All right.
So, it's like I have to, I apologize to all the township residents of all the townships. It's just that balloon, the borough is squeezing that balloon, and it's got to pop out somewhere else. And unfortunately, that's the townships. And, we played the same games. What could we not do to save money? But, another problem with running a sewer plant is you never know what the DEP is going to throw at you next, and you got to be ready to handle the regulatory curve, and you have to stay ahead of it. So that's also why we're doing things like the anaerobic digester, because it's only going to, and the beneficial reuse water that only helps us down the road. And that's probably why for many years we were able to get away without a rate increase.
Supervisor Magruder.
Actually, quickie, can you help me understand the Rock Springs, what happened there?
The Rock Springs Water Company, oh, that's been neglected to the point of people on the system can't get potable water out of it. And some larger entity is probably going to have to buy it and then spend millions of dollars upgrading it, and somebody's got to get the bill for that.
Any more questions? Gentlemen, thank you for coming in. I requested this because of questions that came in, and instead of hearing hearsay, we were able to, get it, the fact, so we can,
Now, mind you, Tom Fontaine might try and tell you something else, but.
No, but we appreciate you taking the time out to come and explain to us, the fact of it, and then we'll discuss it as we need to.
Yeah, and I point out, you seem to have the same problem we have. We have a lot of empty chairs at our meetings. Now, granted, ours are at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. Maybe people can't get out of work, but sometimes I wish the public would come. I'll tell you, the one time we had a lot of full chairs is, if you remember, a few years ago, when we were putting in the new odor control facility. And while there was no odor control facility, how that part of College Township reeked. We had a lot of people come in to complain about the smell.
But we thank you for taking the time out. Supervisor Abrams, I see your hand, and we can move on from there.
Only thing is, should we have this on our agenda to discuss if we want to do anything about it for a future meeting?
I don't know that there's anything to do because it's between UAJ and the
And
borough.
borough.
Perhaps after your March 14th deadline, you gentlemen could reach out to us and let us know what happens.
Yeah, because let's see what happens with that. Either we come to an agreement or we don't, and you know, in which case, at some point, we need to say, hey, what about our residents? No, but, you know, I'm seeing, you know, I know I'm on the record here, but I'm seeing a lot of miscues coming out of the borough lately, and I'm trying to figure out why.
Well, we
No
thank
comment.
you. We thank you for taking the time out and getting
Good luck to you.
that on the record. All right. What am I on there? Next on the agenda is the tentative 2025 meeting dates.
So we are proposing that we stick to the same meeting schedule as we have, with two minor exceptions. The first is the second meeting in February. Larry, Tyler, and I will actually be in Hershey at a public labor law conference, which is as exciting as it sounds.
Okay.
So we would recommend that you cancel that meeting. And then in July, there's some vacations planned, so we are asking that you consider moving that back to the second Wednesday, which is July 9th. You don't have to take any action on these dates tonight. We'll put them on your January 6th agenda, but we just wanted to give you time to look at them and see if you had any issues.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody have any issues to
Well,
add?
July 9th is my cat's birthday, so I don't know.
We will have a
Know if I
cake
can be
for your
present for
cat.
No, no.
We'll make sure of it.
Was my cat's or my mom's?
Oh, yeah, right.
We'll have a
They're like
cake
a day apart.
for your mom.
Okay, if the board is okay with that, then we can submit the request to, you know,
We'll put that on the
Put it on the
January 6th
agenda.
agenda. Yep.
all right. And moving on. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any items on the consent agenda that the supervisor would like to discuss, vote on separately, or remove at this time?
I move to approve the consent agenda
All right.
items as shown on the agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Moving on. Next is the manager's report. Amy.
Oh, the highlight of the evening right now. I just have two, maybe three little minor things. First of all, we are looking for an additional representative for the library board. We have one person sort of teed up to take over, but both of our library boards are up this year. Library board reps are up this year. So if you know anyone who is interested, or if anyone of the general public is interested, please shoot me an email and I can get you the application to fill out. Secondly, we just found out that we are getting $65,000 from the Center County Liquid Fuels allocation, which we will use to address drainage way issues on Douglas Drive and also North Oak Lane, part of the North Oak Lane paving project that we're going to finish this year. So just a huge shout out to Michelle Amaro, our engineer, for finding this grant opportunity and getting us the money, which was very much appreciated. And then lastly, myself and Chief Jolly met with Senator Langerholtz and his staff to discuss an idea that I heard about at a PML legislative committee meeting, actually. The state right now is actually studying if they want to expand the use of automated speed enforcement cameras elsewhere in the state of Pennsylvania. Right now, they're only allowed to be used in the city of Philadelphia, and it was just expanded to 5 corridors within the city, and then also school zones within Philadelphia and then on work zones. So we met with them to talk about the Atherton Street corridor. I met with the managers from State College Borough and Ferguson Township, and the chief spoke with the chiefs from State College and Ferguson. And I also spoke with Penn State University, who was supportive also of this project, perhaps moving into a study phase. So we spoke with Senator Langerholtz and his staff and basically lobbied hard to try to get ourselves into a study. They're doing a study all through 2025 to look at future pilot areas where these cameras could be used and expanded. There's no guarantee we'll even get into the study at this point, but we're trying very hard because we think there's some benefit. There are significant safety concerns along that corridor, and in the city of Philadelphia, they found along Roosevelt Boulevard where they used it, which we obviously are not the city of Philadelphia. We do not have 6 lanes of traffic on Atherton Street, nor the amount of cars they do, but they reduced their accidents by 36% and their speed violations by 21% when they use the speed cameras. So the idea is less about giving people tickets and more about helping to make the corridor safer. We've had some significant pedestrian accidents through there and some other accidents as well. So we're trying. I don't know if there's any guarantee. I thought someone at somewhere along the lines were going to tell me no and just to stop talking at some point. That hasn't happened yet, so I'm encouraged, but we will see what happens. They're studying at local government commission. It would be all of 2025. They would make a recommendation the end of 25, and it says in their recommendations now that these things only move forward if you have intergovernmental cooperation, if you have support from your general public. Like if the public comes out and says, this is the worst idea you've ever had, they don't want to put it in that kind of an area. But we're looking at all the tools we could possibly get because I don't know that we're ever going to get local use of radar. So I will continue to update you until someone does say no to me, or maybe they'll say yes. I don't know. Maybe that'll be my present this year.
Amy, when was that meeting?
We met last week. Yeah, last week with his staff. And they were very helpful. He had his Transportation Commission Executive Director on there and his Chief of Staff and Julie, his local staff person as well. Very, very, very helpful.
Great. Any questions for our township manager at this time? Supervisor Magruder.
Where do you think, I mean, you probably can't anticipate this right now, but where do you think they would put those radars?
So what we did was the police chiefs went through and identified a certain number of intersections through the corridor and looked at based on high crash rates, basically. And we have about 1,000, a little bit over 1,000 crashes in a 5-year period, which is 200 crashes a year along that stretch. So the corridor has some significant safety concerns. I don't know how they're gonna do the study, right? I don't know how the local government commission's gonna look at it. But we pitched to Senator Langerholtz and his staff that we're a good model for, we have a troublesome corridor, right? And so looking at studying how this could be used, and it's not something that we're using. The concern, I think, with local use of radar in years past was always someone's gonna use that to make money. We're not doing that. We're using this on these targeted intersections that have significant safety concerns already to try to make them safer, and that's the goal of the project. So again, we have to see where it goes, but we have 12, I think it's 12 intersections that we've identified through the corridor.
What's the extent of North Atherton again?
It's Patton, basically from Valley Vista through to Branch Road in State College.
About 5 miles.
Yeah.
You go in Connecticut Avenue in Maryland, till you get into the District of Columbia, they've done exactly the same thing. And it's an engineered process once they agree to do it, to look at that. But if you drive down Connecticut Avenue, you will, and you don't obey the speed limit, you will get a nice little notice in the mail.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every state but Pennsylvania is doing this beyond construction now. You can barely drive in the state of Maryland without going through a zone where there are traffic cameras that will send you a ticket.
And they will send you the ticket even if you live in Pennsylvania.
Yes, they will.
And they will send it with swiftness.
Yes.
And it will surprise you for how much money it is.
Someone has experienced this, yes.
Several of us have experience.
Also,
Somebody very close to.
I mean, we got a dispensary. I'm sure people are driving slow there.
So John, really?
What, maybe? so forget
Thank
the
you.
radar, just put a dispensary, Bill.
Okay.
Controversial. Strip that, CNET. Strike that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I support all our local businesses. Am I saying something wrong? I don't know what I'm saying. I'll shut up.
You just had to make this. Thank you. Amy, is that it?
That's all.
Thank you. Moving on, next on the agenda is the committee reports. I know most of the committees were canceled, our executive, finance, public safety, and general forum, which I sit on, except the general forum was canceled. Is there any other supervisor or staff that would like to make a comment on this?
No, Climate was canceled.
Huh?
Climate was canceled also.
Comments? Okay, great.
Not that it had.
All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is other business. And without further ado, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. I would like to thank everyone, especially the board, staff, and CNET crew. And the board and staff again, we would like to wish everyone a happy holiday. This meeting is now adjourned.